There is a type of business that has no storefront, no sign on the door, no employees in uniform, no Instagram grid with product shots, and a carefully managed aesthetic, no Shark Tank pitch, no launch event, no announcement, and yet it generates income every day, quietly, consistently, often without the owner doing anything more than having made one good decision at some point in the past. I call it an invisible business, and the Bible is full of them. Not the spectacular businesses. Not the ones that required a dramatic leap of faith or a miraculous provision or a visible sign from heaven before the first step could be taken. The ones that operated in the background, that produced without fanfare, that looked from the outside like ordinary life, while from the inside they were generating income that the owner could rely on regardless of what else was happening in the world. Joseph stored grain in cities across Egypt. The storage operation was invisible. The food was underground, managed by administrators, generating value every day without Joseph physically touching a kernel of wheat. The woman of Proverbs 31 had merchants distributing her products across a network that extended well beyond her household. The income from those merchants arrived without her being present in any of those transactions. The master in the parable of the talents expected his servants to generate a return on what had been entrusted to them, not through dramatic action, but through the quiet, faithful deployment of what they had been given. Invisible businesses, biblical precedent, daily income. Today, I'm going to show you 5 of them, mapped onto what is actually available to an ordinary American in 2025. 5 businesses that require no storefront, no large team, no dramatic leap, and no one else's permission to start. And I'm going to be specific, not inspirational. Specific. Stay until the end, because the 5th invisible business is the one that most people already have the raw material for and have been giving away for free for years without recognizing it as the income-producing asset it actually is. There is a verse in Ecclesiastes that I want to anchor everything in before we go further. Ecclesiastes 11:1. Ship your grain across the sea. After many days you may receive a return. And verse 2. Invest in 7 ventures. Yes, in 8. You do not know what disaster may come upon the land. These verses describe an economic posture that is fundamentally different from the way most people think about income. Most people think of income as something generated by activity, by showing up, by working, by being present and productive in a specific location during specific hours. Solomon describes income as something generated by deployment, by sending capital, knowledge, skill, or content into a market, and allowing it to work over time without your constant presence required. Ship the grain across the sea. After many days, you receive a return. Not immediately, not while you're watching. After many days, the invisible business is built on that timeline. It requires patience that the paycheck-to-paycheck mindset is not designed for, and it rewards that patience in ways that no single paycheck can replicate. Write in the comments, I'm building something that works when I'm not watching, because that declaration is the beginning of the invisible business mindset. The first invisible business, interest-bearing capital, money that works the night shift. Proverbs 13:11. Dishonest money dwindles away, but whoever gathers money little by little makes it grow. Little by little, gathered honestly, made to grow. The invisible business of interest-bearing capital is the oldest and most foundational of all the invisible businesses in the Bible. It requires no product, no team, no customer service, no marketing, and no physical presence of any kind. It requires capital deployed into instruments that pay a return. and the discipline to leave that capital alone long enough for the return to compound. In the United States, right now, the interest rate environment has made fixed income instruments more attractive than they have been in 15 years. High-yield savings accounts at institutions like Marcus by Goldman Sachs, Ally, and Sophie are currently offering annual percentage yields between 4.5% and 5.1%. That means $50,000 in a high-yield savings account is generating approximately $2,250 to $2,550 per year, without your presence, without your labor, without any action on your part, beyond the initial deposit. Treasury bills available directly through treasurydirect.gov, the official U.S. government platform, no brokerage required, no fee, are currently yielding between 4.3% and 5.0% at various maturities, with the full faith and credit of the federal government behind them. Series Wine savings bonds, through the same platform, offer inflation-indexed returns that protect purchasing power in inflationary environments. And for those building the long-term invisible business, broad market index funds tracking the S&P 500 have historically delivered an average annual return of approximately 10.7% over 50 years, according to Standard & Poor's historical data. A dollar invested in 1974 in such a fund is worth approximately $150 today. Not because of daily management, not because of active trading, but because of deployment and patience. The income these instruments generate is genuinely invisible. It arrives in account statements. It compounds in portfolios. It works while you sleep, while you're at church, while you're on vacation, while you're doing everything else in your life. The gap between what most Americans earn on their savings and what this invisible business can earn for them is not a knowledge problem at this point. It is a decision problem. The information is accessible. The instruments are accessible. The barrier is choosing to deploy. In Salt Lake City, a couple named Chris and Beth had $43,000 sitting in a traditional savings account at their primary bank, earning 0.06% annually, effectively nothing. They had been meaning to move it for a while. A conversation with a friend who had been following this exact framework prompted them to finally act. They opened a high-yield savings account in an afternoon, transferred $30,000, left $13,000 accessible for short-term needs. In the first year, that $30,000 generated $1,485 in interest income, not a life-changing number in isolation, but $1,185 that had not existed before, that arrived without any additional work. That compounded into the following year's base. The invisible business was always available to them. It just needed to be deployed. The instruction map. First step, if you have savings in a traditional bank account earning below 1% annually, open a high-yield savings account this week. The process takes 15 minutes and the transfer occurs within 1 to 3 business days. There is no reason to continue leaving that income uncollected. Second step, research treasurydirect.gov for direct purchase of Treasury bills and notes at current yields. No broker, no fee, no intermediary. Minimum purchase is $100. Third step, if your employer offers a 401k with an employer match and you are not contributing enough to capture the full match, address that before anything else. Employer matching is a 50% to 100% immediate return on your contribution with no market risk on the matched amount. It is the highest return financial action available to most working Americans. Fourth step, open a Roth IRA if you qualify and haven't already. In 2025, the contribution limit is $7,000 for those under 50 and $8,000 for those 50 and older. Growth inside a Roth IRA is tax-free at withdrawal, meaning every dollar of compound growth over 30 years exits without any tax obligation. Fifth step, automate. Set up a recurring transfer on the day your paycheck arrives. The invisible business of capital deployment works most reliably when it does not depend on your discipline in the moment, but on the automation you set up once. The second invisible business, rental income, space that earns without your labor, Proverbs 31:16. She considers a field and buys it. Out of her earnings, she plants a vineyard, the productive asset, acquired after evaluation, activated to generate return. Rental income is the invisible business that has created more generational wealth in America than almost any other vehicle, specifically because it generates income independent of the owner's ongoing labor after the asset is in place and the tenant is in residence. The mortgage is paid by the tenant, the property appreciates over time, the owner receives the spread between income and costs and the long-term equity accumulation, without showing up to work every day in that property. But here is what most people miss about this invisible business when they think it's out of reach financially. You do not need to own an investment property to start generating rental income. You need to inventory what you already have. The extra bedroom that sits empty most of the year. The garage that stores things nobody has touched in 18 months. The parking space in a building near a transit hub. The vacation home that costs carrying expenses 45 weeks per year while you're elsewhere. The basement that functions as a storage room. The ADU on your property that has been sitting unconverted because the project felt too large to start. According to Neighbor.com's published host data, the average host on their platform, which facilitates rentals of garages, basements, driveways, and storage spaces, earns between $150 and $450 per month per space. Airbnb hosts with a single room available in their primary residence earn an average of $924 per month, according to Airbnb's own published figures. Furnish Finder hosts, renting to traveling healthcare workers, report average monthly rents of $200 to $2,500 for furnished medium-term stays. None of these require owning an investment property. None require a property management company. None require being present for each transaction in any meaningful ongoing way. In Memphis, a woman named Diane owned a home with a detached two-car garage. One car used the garage. The other half sat empty for 9 years. A neighbor told her about Neighbor.com. Diane listed the space. A local small business owner needed clean, secure storage for equipment between jobs. He paid $285 per month. He has been there for 2 years. $285 per month. $3,120 per year. From a half garage that was generating nothing. Diane did not acquire a new asset. She activated a portion of an asset she had owned for a decade without recognizing its productive potential. The instruction map. First step. Walk your property. Literally, physically walk it, with a specific question. What space exists here that I am funding but not monetizing? Garage, basement, backyard, driveway, detached unit, spare bedroom. Every square foot that exists and isn't generating income is productive capacity, sitting idle. Second step, match each space to the rental format that fits its characteristics. Neighbor.com for storage and parking. Furnished Finder for medium-term furnished rooms and units. Airbnb for short-term stays in areas with tourism or business travel demand. Zillow Rental Manager or Craigslist for traditional long-term residential rental. Third step, research actual market rates for your specific zip code and property type, not national averages that may not reflect your market. AirDNA provides short-term rental income estimates by zip code. Rentometer provides long-term rental market data by location. Fourth step, start with the minimum viable version. Clean, functional, safe, and listed. The improvements come from the income the space generates, not from a large upfront renovation investment before you have confirmed demand. Fifth step, when the first space is producing consistently, use that income to fund the next step, either improving the current space, saving toward acquiring a dedicated investment property, or expanding into an adjacent rental format. If this is landing for you, if you've been sitting on a space that could be generating income and you haven't taken the step yet, subscribe so you don't miss the next conversation. This channel is built specifically for the person who is ready to start building what the Bible already described. The third invisible business, dividend income, collecting a share of corporate profits. Proverbs 3:9-10. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. Vats brimming over with new wine. In the agricultural economy of ancient Israel, the mature vineyard produced recurring harvests without requiring the original planting effort to be repeated each season. The asset, once established and tended, generated income from its accumulated productive capacity, season after season. That is the economic profile of dividend-paying equity ownership. When you own shares in established companies that distribute a portion of their profits to shareholders, companies like Coca-Cola, Johnson & Johnson, Procter & Gamble, Realty Income Corporation, utility companies with long dividend histories, those companies send you a payment every quarter simply because you own a fraction of them. You do not manage their operations. You do not attend their board meetings. You are not present in any of their activity. You are an owner, and owners collect. The dividend aristocrats, S&P 500 companies, that have increased their dividend payment every single year for at least 25 consecutive years, represent the most consistent record of shareholder income distribution in American financial market history. Coca-Cola has paid increasing dividends for 61 consecutive years, Johnson & Johnson for 61, Procter & Gamble for 67, through the 2008 financial crisis, through COVID, through every recession and market disruption in the past 6 decades. These companies continued distributing income to their owners. Realty Income Corporation, a REIT that bills itself as the monthly dividend company, has paid monthly dividends without interruption for over 26 consecutive years, currently yielding approximately 5% to 6% annually. That means $100,000 invested in a diversified portfolio of dividend-paying stocks and REITs generates approximately $5,000 to $6,000 per year in dividend income, delivered automatically, without any additional action from you after the initial investment. The vats brimming over while you sleep. In Phoenix, a couple named David and Karen had been investing $800 per month into a dividend-focused ETF portfolio for 9 years. They had not started with a large lump sum. They had simply invested $800 consistently every month through market ups and downs, reinvesting all dividends automatically. After 9 years, their portfolio generated approximately $4,200 in annual dividend income, even before they added their own contributions for that year. The invisible business they built over 9 years of consistency was now generating income, independent of whether they added another dollar to it. The instruction map. First step, start with dividend-focused ETFs before individual stocks. Vanguard Dividend Appreciation ETF, VIG, Schwab U.S. Dividend Equity ETF, SCHD, and iShares Core Dividend Growth ETF, DGRO, provide diversified exposure to dozens of dividend-paying companies with far less risk than any single stock. Second step, enable automatic dividend reinvestment, DRIP. through your brokerage. Each dividend payment automatically purchases additional shares, compounding your ownership stake and accelerating the income growth over time. Third step, invest consistently regardless of market conditions. The investor who adds to their dividend portfolio every month through both bull and bear markets captures more of the compounding effect than the investor who waits for favorable conditions. Fourth step, think in decades. A dividend portfolio that generates $1,200 per year today, with consistent reinvestment and regular contributions, can generate $8,000 to $12,000 per year in 15 years, purely from the compounding of what was already built. The patience is the skill. Fifth step, diversify across sectors: telecom, healthcare, consumer staples, real estate, utilities, industrials. When one sector underperforms, the others absorb the impact. Solomon said invest in 7 ventures, yes, in 8. A diversified dividend portfolio is exactly that. The fourth invisible business, a business that runs without its owner. Genesis 41:41. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. Joseph did not personally manage every granary transaction in Egypt. He built and oversaw the system that managed every granary transaction in Egypt. That distinction is the entire difference between building a job for yourself and building a business. A job requires your presence. When you stop showing up, the income stops. A business has its own operational capacity. When you step back from the daily execution, the business continues, because the systems, the people, and the documented processes carry the operation without requiring you to be present for every decision. The invisible business of a systemized operation is the one that most small business owners in America never quite build, not because they lack the revenue, but because they never made the transition from operator to owner. They do everything themselves. They are the business. And when they stop, everything stops. The transition requires 2 things: documentation and delegation. Documentation first. Every repeatable process. The steps for opening and closing, the protocol for handling a difficult customer, the quality standard for the core product, the system for ordering inventory, the procedure for onboarding a new team member, written down in enough detail that someone who has never done it before can do it correctly by following the written instructions. That documentation is the business. It is what makes the operation transferable to another person. It is what allows the owner to step back from the daily execution and into oversight. Delegation second. Hiring the first person, the virtual assistant, the part-time employee, the contractor for a specific function, to execute what the documentation describes. In Nashville, a woman named Lisa had been running a successful custom cake business for 6 years from her home kitchen. She took every order personally. She baked every cake herself. She delivered every order herself. She handled every customer inquiry herself. She was fully booked and completely capped. She could not take one more order without giving up sleep. She could not take a vacation without shutting down for the week. She could not be sick without the business collapsing. She spent 2 months writing down every single process: the order intake form, the pricing formula, the recipe procedures, the packaging standard, the delivery protocol, the customer follow-up sequence. She hired a part-time baker, a culinary school student who needed hours, to execute the documented production processes. She retained customer intake and quality control for herself. In her first full year operating this way, her revenue increased by 60%. She took her first actual vacation in 6 years. When she was briefly sick, her assistant handled the production, and the business kept running. Joseph managed Egypt. Lisa managed the business that made the cakes. The business that runs without the owner is invisible because the owner is no longer visibly running it. The income arrives anyway. The instruction map. First step, honestly assess whether you currently have a business or a self-employment situation. If stopping equals income stopping, you have a job. That is a legitimate starting point. But naming it accurately is the first step toward changing it. Second step, document before you delegate. The process documentation is the prerequisite for effective delegation. You cannot hand off what only exists in your head. Third step, start with the function that requires the least expertise and the most time. The task that takes you several hours per week, but that could be trained to another person in a single afternoon. That is the first delegation target. Fourth step, use the time freed by delegation to focus on the function only you can fill: client relationships, product development, business strategy, quality oversight. That is what owner-operators are for, not the execution of routine tasks. Fifth step, measure the business: revenue per employee, gross margin, net operating income as a percentage of revenue. The business owner who tracks these numbers can see whether the system is healthy or deteriorating. The one who manages by feel has no early warning system. The fifth invisible business: packaged knowledge. Build it once, earn from it. Indefinitely, Habakkuk point 2. Write down the revelation and make it plain on tablets so that a herald may run with it. Write it down. Make it accessible. Make it runnable. That instruction was given approximately 600 years before the birth of Christ. It describes, with complete precision, the economic model of the digital content creator, the online course builder, the newsletter publisher, the podcast host, the ebook author. Create a piece of content or packaged knowledge once. Make it accessible. Let it run. The fifth invisible business is the most recently emerged of the five. It became fully accessible to ordinary people only with the internet. But it has the lowest barrier to entry, the lowest capital requirement, and the most direct relationship between what you already know and what the business produces. When you create a digital product, a course, an ebook, a guide, a template, a framework, a membership community, you build it once. And then it earns from every sale, every download, every enrollment, without your presence in any individual transaction. A course enrolls at 2 in the morning when you are asleep. An ebook is purchased during your lunch break at your day job. A template is downloaded while you are at your child's soccer practice. A newsletter issue generates ad revenue from every open, on every day, in perpetuity. The Kajabi platform reports that its creators have collectively earned over $6 billion in revenue from digital products and courses. Substack hosts over 3 million paid newsletter subscriptions. The online education market in the United States is projected to reach $166 billion by 2026. These revenues are not primarily generated by celebrities or mainstream influencers. The overwhelming majority of that economic activity is generated by people with genuine expertise in specific domains, who made the decision to package what they knew and make it available at scale. And here is the specific observation that I want you to sit with. There is something that you know from years of professional practice, from lived experience, from navigating a specific challenge that many other people face, that you are currently either not sharing at all or sharing for free in contexts where it generates connection but not income. Every time someone asks you for advice about the thing you know deeply, every time someone follows your recommendation without question because they trust your expertise in this domain, every time you sit down with someone and walk them through what you figured out, and they leave saying, "I had no idea that was exactly what I needed," that is market demand, real demand for something specific that you possess, that they don't have. And packaging what you know is not exploitation of that demand. It is the appropriate response to it. It is Habakkuk's instruction. Write it down so that the herald can run with it, so that the person who needs it at 2 in the morning, who cannot call you, who cannot attend your workshop, who lives in a different city, can access it. In Cincinnati, a woman named Angela had been a licensed mortgage broker for 12 years. She had watched first-time homebuyers make the same costly, avoidable mistakes in the loan process over and over, not from lack of intelligence, but from lack of accessible, honest information about how the process actually works. She started a YouTube channel. Her first video was recorded on her phone in her car before work. 12 minutes. No editing. She explained the difference between pre-qualification and pre-approval, a distinction that confuses most first-time buyers and that matters enormously in a competitive market. In 8 months, she had 47,000 subscribers. She launched a digital course, a complete first-time homebuyer preparation program, for $497. In its first 90 days, 211 people enrolled. 105,267 from knowledge she had been providing in individual appointments for 12 years. The knowledge was not new. The deployment was. Write it down. Let the herald run. The instruction map. First step, identify the specific knowledge you have that a defined audience is actively searching for and not finding in a form that fully serves them. The intersection of your genuine expertise and their existing documented demand. That is your product. Second step, validate before you build. Before recording a single video or writing a single page of a finished course, sell 10 spots in a live version of the same content. A live workshop, a live cohort, a live Q&A series. Deliver it live first. Learn exactly what the audience needs. Then build the recorded version based on what you learned. Third step, choose one platform and one format and commit to it for 12 months. YouTube for video, a newsletter for written content, a podcast for audio. The creator who spreads across 5 platforms at launch achieves nothing on any of them. Pick one, build it. Fourth step, price for the transformation the content delivers, not for the number of hours of material it contains. A course that reliably produces a specific, valuable outcome for the people who complete it is worth what that outcome is worth to them, not what the content runtime suggests. Fifth step, treat every piece of content you create as a long-term asset. Angela's video about pre-qualification versus pre-approval from 2022 is still generating views today, still routing people toward her course, still earning. Every piece you create is a working asset that does not require maintenance to continue producing. Build it well, let it run. 5 invisible businesses, 5 different expressions of the same biblical principle. The principle that Ecclesiastes 11.1 described 2,500 years before the concept of passive income existed. Ship your grain across the sea. After many days, you may receive a return. Deploy what you have into instruments that work independently of your presence. And wait, with patience, with faith, and with the discipline to leave the deployment in place long enough for the return to arrive. Interest-bearing capital that works the night shift in your savings and investment accounts. Rental income from the physical space you already own and have not yet activated. Dividend income from the productive capacity of established businesses whose profits you share by virtue of ownership. A business structured to run without you, where the documentation and the team carry the operation, while you focus on what only you can do. And packaged knowledge, the expertise you have been giving away for free or delivering in individual, time-limited conversations, written down, made plain on tablets, and allowed to run as the herald runs with it. None of these require a storefront. None require a dramatic announcement. None require anyone's permission. They require the decision to deploy, and they require patience that the paycheck-to-paycheck mindset is not designed for, but that the biblical mind is, after many days. That is the timeline, and the return is real. Let me pray over you. Father, thank you for every person who is watching this, and who is ready to build something beyond just their hours. Thank you that the model for invisible income was not invented by the financial services industry or by Silicon Valley. You modeled it through Joseph's administration of a national food supply. You described it through the woman who planted a vineyard from her own earnings. You instructed it through Habakkuk, when you said to write the vision down so that the herald could run. The blueprint has always been available. Speak today to everyone watching this, to the one whose savings are earning almost nothing because they haven't moved them yet. Give them the clarity and the courage to take that step this week. To the one with a room, a garage, a property that is sitting idle, open their eyes to the asset that has been sleeping in plain sight. To the one who has been giving their knowledge away for free, because they never believed anyone would pay for what comes naturally to them, show them the market that has already been telling them otherwise. To the one whose business still stops when they stop, give them the vision of what the systemized version looks like and the discipline to build the documentation that makes it possible. May the invisible businesses built from this video outlast the people who build them. May the grain shipped across the sea come back after many days, multiplied, compounded, faithful to the principle that Solomon observed and described, and that has not changed in 3,000 years. In Jesus' name, Amen. Write in the comments, "I'm shipping my grain across the sea." Because that declaration, that decision to deploy what you have into something that works beyond your hours, is the beginning of the invisible business that has been waiting for you to start it. Ecclesiastes 11:1 is still true. After many days, you will receive a return. Ship the grain.